Mercedes has started the 2022 regulations on the wrong foot and is still struggling to understand where their car lacks performance, but for the first time ever, it seems like they're on the right path for 2024. Now, after pledging to ditch everything they know about the current concept and philosophy of the car, the upcoming season will see a brand new car hitting the asphalt. But is it something that will help Mercedes win more races and put a stop to Hamilton's streak of 2 winless seasons? The W14 was arguably one of the worst cars that exited production at Brackley, even though it was able to win second place in the Constructors' Championship. However, the W13 at least won a race last year in Brazil, and for the first time since 2013, this was a season in which a Mercedes driver did not stand on the highest place on the pedestal, something that puts the Brackley-based squad in a very difficult position moving forward in 2024. Be that as it may, this doesn't mean that the team is giving up on trying before 2026, quite the contrary. The news that is coming from Mercedes is very promising, as they're looking to start everything from scratch, which could turn either horribly wrong or surprisingly good for their own liking. When talking about this matter, Wolff was very adamant that Mercedes is going to change everything that is to be changed in the car, but we'll get to that later in this video. First, I want to talk about why the team is actually focused on this change so much, and that's been heard loud and clear from Hamilton's latest statement for the W14. It's no surprise that the 7-time world champion was very eager to finally come to the end of the 2023 season, and he didn't mince words when elaborating about the performance that this car had, even though he had a lot of hope after the Austin floor upgrades. Furthermore, Hamilton went on to say, "Abu Dhabi was pretty bad. It couldn't really be much worse. I was just slow. I started 11th and came 9th. I just struggled with the car and can't really say much more. Tomorrow is a new day, so I'll just focus on that for now." The team can't take too much from the 2023 season, really. It's not been a great year in general. There's not a lot to take from the year in general. The fact that I survived it, probably that's about it. At this moment, I don't really know what will happen. For Red Bull to win by 17 seconds in the end, and they haven't even developed their car since August, is definitely a concern. However, Hamilton did say that the team learned a lot about their car, and now everything is in their own hands to fix it. The engineers back in Brackley and Brixworth know what they have to do, and this time, the 7-time world champion will make sure that his feedback is properly implemented. Hamilton had 6 podium finishes this year, and compared to his teammate Russell, who only had 2, it's definitely a huge statement as to where the team is located right now. However, this is more of a bad news kind of thing for Mercedes than good news stuff, because we're talking about a team that won 8 consecutive Constructors' Championships. Anything below P1 counts as a loss to them, which is quite natural considering the fact that the team is one of the best engineers and staff in the F1 world, even though they lost a huge chunk of it to other teams in the past 2 years. This might be the reason why Mercedes is starting everything all over again from scratch, and when we say scratch, we absolutely mean it. Wolff has been quite sure to affirm that the car will look nothing like we've been used to in the past 2 years, and it seems like the W13 and the W14, which were produced under the command of Mike Elliott, who has now departed the team, are going to be held in the Mercedes History Museum. Elaborating on the W15's performance, as well as where the car is currently headed, Wolff went on to say, "We're changing the concept. We're completely moving away from how we laid out the chassis, the weight distribution, the airflow. I mean, literally, there's almost every component that's being changed, because only by doing that, I think we have a chance. We could get it wrong also. So, between not gaining what we expect, catching up and making a big step and competing in the front, everything is possible. I've never in my life felt optimistic about anything. It may sound a bit miserable, but it's protected me about managing my expectations and just pushing harder. Because I think it's never good enough. That's why I sit here with a bittersweet feeling. We won P2 in the Constructors' Championship, but we lost P1. Now, this is something that's been discussed previously by Mercedes as well, and the trackside engineer Andrew Shovlin was quite adamant when talking about changing the entire concept of the car. Mercedes pledged to throw everything they know about the car and not stick to any particular concept, a mistake they made after winning a race with the Zero Pod design back in Brazil and losing even additional development time with what could have been a better concept for the car. One of the key struggles the W13 and the W14 had was the inconsistency of the car as well as the instability, and these variations could happen at different locations on the same track, which is the last thing you need in these technical regulations. The increased weight and the ground effect are things that put Red Bull way ahead of its competition. But now it's Mercedes' time to answer all of the critics. So the real question is whether or not they'll be able to do so in a couple of months. Lewis Hamilton has shared his negative thoughts about the engineers not listening to him earlier this year. And when talking about this matter even further, the 7-time world champion went on to say, "I remember the car feeling exactly the same as the previous season's car during February's test in Silverstone, and that definitely was not a great feeling. I really had high hopes. I'm sure there were frustrations because I'd asked for certain changes and they weren't done. I think for this year they thought, the fundamentals are good and we just have to go here, and it was not the case. That's why I was frustrated in February, because they hadn't made the changes I asked for." The Brit went on to the point of asking himself the question of whether it's something that he's doing in the wrong here, because the car just doesn't seem to be fitting the narrative, and for some reason there's absolutely nothing he can do in order to win a race with the past two engineering products that came out of Mercedes factories. Hamilton's last win dates all the way back to 2021 and Saudi Arabia, and even Wolff acknowledges that the problem is not on Hamilton's side, it's with the car, as the Austrian went on to say, "If we were able to give him a car, he'll be fighting for a world championship, I have no doubt. But it's clear if you have a car like we have now, you're not at ease with it." The situation for Mercedes is loud and clear. If they miss the 2024 concept, then they're very likely going to drop from the P2 spot, because the only thing that kept them there in the first place was the fact that McLaren discovered the right upgrades very late in the season, while Ferrari's inconsistencies are something that you cannot always gamble too much upon. Aston Martin has also made some strides from the previous winter period, and all in all, we're going to see some high stakes being played back in the Mercedes factories. This was definitely known from the beginning. It just wasn't known that Mercedes would go down to the last piece of the car in trying to figure out what is essentially wrong with it. Wolff previously said that he's certain that if they were to strip down the car to the last nut and bolt, they would find a mechanical issue with it as well. The Mercedes drivers are going to be happy about all of the changes coming down the pipeline, but the question is whether or not they will like the end product of these changes, something that can only be answered in the winter testing in February. With Red Bull not being seriously affected by the penalty of breaching the budget cap, Wolff and the rest of the F1 teams have zero to no hope that the Austrian team will slow down on its own, and it's now in their hands to do what Red Bull has been doing consistently in the past couple of years, to try and put more pressure on Verstappen, who's more or less the sole leader of the team at this point. So what do you think about all of the changes for Mercedes? Let us know in the comments down below.